What is going on, guys and girls? It's Ghost Robo, and we are here to talk about DMC, my full review of the newest Devil May Cry game from the fine folks at Ninja Theory. Now, before we even get started, I want to make a note that I think the character design in this game is pretty on point. And if you're going to quickly dismiss DMC just because Dante doesn't look the way you want Dante to look, I think that's pretty dumb, and you're glossing over one of the best character action games this entire generation. Yes, DMC does enough to stay competitive and differentiate itself to match up with the likes of Bayonetta and God of War 3 as one of the greatest character action games of the last 7 or 8 years. Right off the bat, Ninja Theory sets the tone and says, hey, we are going to go completely bananas crazy and establish two parallel dimensions. Limbo, this psychotic world full of demons where Dante will spend most of his time, and the real world where there are, human-formed demons that are ruling things and badness goes down. The characters are all very well designed, I think. All look very cool. It doesn't hurt that most people think Dante looks a lot like me. I don't see the comparison, but hey, we'll let the commenters be the commenters, and I will focus on the gameplay, which is outstanding. I love games like this where your actions on the buttons directly correlate to beautiful movesets. You really feel like you are in complete control, and you are really the one who is totally responsible for whether you win or lose a fight. How well you can execute combos, how well you can mix up weapons. It feels like my performance directly indicates how this game will work. There is a couple moments of iffy camera work, but for the most part, I never felt blindsided by anything stupid. I never felt unfairly killed by some dumb, gigantic enemy. I never felt like I was overwhelmed to the point of, insurmountable odds. It has a perfect balance of just the right amount of enemies, and it ramps it up quite nicely. There's a huge variety of weapons, each serving a very fun and unique purpose. My favorite ended up being the Aquila, these spinning blades of angelic fury, but it does a nice job of mixing up demonic weapons and angelic weapons, placing them on the left triggers and on the right triggers appropriately to allow you to basically switch between about 6 or 7 weapons on the fly in the midst of the same combo. You have 3 different varieties of guns, as well as multiple swords, axes, and spinny blade things. I don't know how to qualify those, but I do know they are the most fun to use. The enemy variety is pretty wealthy, but it could be a little bit better. The generic stand-around do-nothing foe is a little too common for my taste, but the bosses more than make up for it. This game does what I always need games like this to do: deliver amazing bosses. To draw a comparison to Bayonetta, both games have very fantastical worlds with epically awesome bosses, and while Bayonettas are more based on scale, Devil May Cry's are much more based on style. These boss fights that I do not want to spoil in this video review are insane and will blow your mind both aesthetically and mechanically. I think they're fantastic. I love pattern-based boss fights that require me to lock in on a certain skill set and execute it to perfection. Now, the final boss isn't the most exciting final boss in any game, but it more than makes up for it for a pretty thrilling conclusion that I think you'll find quite interesting. Now, former fans of the Devil May Cry series will know the story, at least the major beats and what's going to happen between Virgil and Dante, but there's enough new thrown in with Cat and some interesting encounters, and I think it will be fresh for anyone. The biggest surprise for me in DMC is that the visual menagerie of how they compose this game is freaking outstanding. You go underwater, you go upside down, all sorts of crazy places within a new set. It's levels you wouldn't really expect to be levels, and they turn out to be just absolutely fantastic. There is not one down moment in the game that I can point out and say, well, that one didn't really factor in. It's not a tower climb. There surely is a tower in DMC, but you're not going to be stuck in linear corridors over and over again. Expansive environments full of lots of visual flair and style just astounded me throughout the entire game, and they do a nice job of integrating the mechanical gameplay with the environments. The platforming feels really good. They've even added some of the weapons to have special effects on your platforming, whether it's flying for a little extra distance or yanking a platform towards you or zooming yourself towards one. And they do a really good job of breaking up the fights with just the right amount of movement, so it doesn't feel like you're stuck in arena after arena, and it also doesn't feel like you're wandering aimlessly. Some people might argue that there isn't a whole ton to do as you wander the halls or jump from platform to platform in between the battles, but I think that adds a great change of pace, and for me was one of the most fun parts of the game. The actual feeling of movement in DMC is quite freeing and really an excellent addition, I think, to this kind of game. It's one thing to be going from fight to fight and using all your combos and building up your score, and they do a great job with making you crave those triple S ranks in DMC, but it is also nice to have something to do when you're not mashing away or memorizing combos. There's a place for both button mashers and very intricate combo makers in this game. I think you can be successful either way, whether you're just constantly switching things up with some of your favorite attacks or you're intricately and effortlessly planning a beautiful string of combos. Either way, it's possible to achieve high ranks and win out each level with an AS, SS, or SSS rank. For those of you interested in the more brutal parts of DMC, there's about 7 difficulty levels, some of which include insta-kills on Dante, insta-kills on enemies and Dante, non-insta-kills on enemies but insta-kills on Dante. It gets all sorts of bat crazy in the brain space and makes you really work for each and every victory. Now, the game is paced very well, the story beats come at you pretty darn quickly, and I didn't feel like anything was dragged out too long or condensed too short. It clocked in for me around 7.5 hours, which I think is a perfect length for this kind of game. Some will argue that $60 for 7.5 hours does not equate to the kind of value they want. To that, I say, I will take quality over quantity every day, any day, all day. My 7.5 hours with DMC was more enjoyable than 90% of the 7.5 hours I spent on other games in 2012, and it really starts the year off nicely, bringing this amazing game into January 2013. I will note that the game seems to kind of waver between demographics, incorporating a lot of very deep storytelling / emotional connection like Ninja Theory is famous for in games like Heavenly Sword and Enslaved, while also staying true to sort of the goofy, ridiculous, over-the-top demonic flair and just immaturity of the DMC series, and sometimes that balance feels a little bit weird. Nonetheless, target demographic for this game should be anyone who enjoys great gameplay, excellent mechanics, and a fantastical world, merging the three to really bring DMC to the top of my list of character action games like I mentioned at the top of this video. If I could pick 2 words to describe DMC in a nutshell, I would definitely choose effortlessly and stylish. I think the game is effortlessly awesome in its gameplay mechanics, in its combat, in the way that you're able to switch between weapons, in the way that the story paces and moves itself, and I think the game is stylish as hell in every way, from the visuals, to the characters, to the bosses, to the enemies, to the way that your weapons interact with each enemy, and the cinematic nature of combo finishers and kills. It's just a really remarkable game, and one that I give my highest praise. The entire time I played DMC, I felt so perfectly gelled with the controller, so perfectly gelled with the on-screen action, and that's something that is really rare in games these days, and definitely sets this one apart. This reboot of Devil May Cry may not be a game changer, it may not be a life-altering experience of a game, but it definitely is fantastic as what it sets out to do, top of its class in character action, and definitely leaves me super excited for the next potential game. They set it up very great at the end for a sequel, so I hope that they will stick true to what they did here in DMC, expand upon it, and make an even more fantastic DMC 2. I think that DMC is one of the most enjoyable hands-on controller experiences of this generation, and worthwhile for any serious gamer. I give this new DMC a 9 out of 10.